Today's November 13th, 2025. This is Equal Ground Headlines, Canada edition. Tonight, we are looking at three big stories. Canada, trying to reset relations with India. Ottawa, betting big on fast-tracked mega-projects. And Canada's spy chief preparing to brief the country on a shifting threat map. Let us start with the India file. Segment 1. Canada and India try a hard reset. For 2 years, relations between Canada and India have been frozen in a deep chill. Trade talks were paused in 2023 after Canada publicly accused the Indian government of involvement in the killing of a Sikh separatist on Canadian soil. New Delhi reacted with anger. Visas were restricted. Negotiations on a trade deal stopped. Diplomatic staff were sent home. Today, there is a clear attempt to turn that page. Canadian Trade Minister Maninder Sidhu is in India on a 3-day visit. He met with Indian Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal and described the talks as, in his words, very productive. Both sides are now talking about a fresh start on trade under Canada's new government. Sidhu says Ottawa wants to restart negotiations for a broad agreement, but with a new process and a more realistic path forward. The focus today is on specific sectors where both sides see gains: critical minerals for electric batteries, clean energy technology, agriculture, aerospace, and artificial intelligence. For Canada, this is about hedging against a more protectionist United States and finding new markets for resources and services. For India, it is about locking in a stable partner for energy, food, and technology as its own economy grows. In the background sits politics. Prime Minister Mark Carney met Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the G7 earlier this year. That meeting opened the door to re-engagement after months of public accusations and counter-accusations. But the hard issues have not gone away. Canada still has a large Sikh diaspora that is active in politics and advocacy. India still views some of those networks as hostile. Canadian security agencies are still investigating foreign interference and threats on Canadian soil. That is why the language from both sides is cautious. Indian officials speak of progress on a new bilateral roadmap, but stress that full normalization also depends on law enforcement cooperation and public safety concerns. In plain terms, Ottawa wants to restart trade and investment. New Delhi wants guarantees that Canada will not be a safe base for movements it considers extremist. If these talks succeed, Canada could regain access to a fast-growing market and attract Indian investment into mining and infrastructure. If they fail, the relationship could slip back into open hostility. For now, both governments are choosing the language of opportunity, not confrontation. But trust, once damaged, is hard to rebuild. That is the real test behind today's smiling photo ops. Segment 2. Carney's fast. Mega projects go live. Our second story is also about economic strategy, but this time at home. Today, in Prince Rupert, British Columbia, Prime Minister Mark Carney is unveiling the second batch of so-called nation-building projects that will be fast-tracked through Ottawa's new Major Projects Office. The idea behind this office is simple on paper. Pick a short list of big energy, mining, transport, or industrial projects that are judged to be in the national interest. Put them through a special review pipeline. Cut red tape, shorten timelines, and get shovels in the ground faster. Connie has already announced the first wave of projects in September. Those included L-long expansions in British Columbia, a small modular nuclear reactor in Ontario, an expansion of the Port of Montreal, and new copper mining capacity in the West. Together, they represent tens of billions of dollars in potential investment. Today's announcement is about the second wave. We do not yet have every project name on that list. But we do know a few key points from the Prime Minister's own previews. First, the list is meant to be a living document, not a one-time splash. Projects will be added over time as they reach a level of readiness and political backing. Unbelieving, and that we said Dennis, Andrea Sarwan, Po, Bear, out. Thanks, anyone. The goal is to reduce Canada's reliance on the U.S. market at a time when Washington is raising tariffs and using trade policy as leverage. Ottawa wants new export routes, new customers, and more domestic processing of critical minerals, not just raw exports. Third, fast-tracking does not just mean speed. It also means exemptions. Projects that receive a national interest label can be shielded from some environmental rules and other regulatory hurdles in the name of economic security. Supporters say this is exactly what Canada needs. A clear pipeline for large projects that create high-wage jobs, help with the energy transition, and send a signal that the country is open for business again. Critics, including Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, argue that the list so far has focused on low-hanging fruit, projects that were already moving, and that Carney is adding bureaucracy while claiming to cut. They also warn that weakening environmental checks, even in the name of growth, could backfire on Indigenous rights, local communities, and climate goals. Today's announcement matters for another reason. It is a real-time test of whether Carney's first budget, tabled last week, can turn from numbers on paper into visible construction and jobs on the ground. The budget leans heavily on these major projects to drive growth at a time of higher deficits and trade tension with the United States. In other words, if the projects stall, the economic strategy stalls with them. Segment 3. CSIS prepared public warning on threats to Canada. Our third story keeps us in Ottawa, but moves from economics to security. This afternoon, the director of the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, Daniel Rogers, is scheduled to deliver his first annual public update on threats to the security of Canada. The speech will take place in Ottawa at 1 p.m. Eastern, with a live stream on the CSIS YouTube channel. This is part of a push by CIS to be more transparent with Canadians about what the agency is seeing. Rogers, who took over as director last year, after serving as a senior national security advisor, has inherited a crowded threat landscape. Foreign interference, espionage, cyber attacks against infrastructure, violent extremism, and attempts to disrupt election. We already have some clues about what he is likely to highlight today. Previous CSIS public reports and government threat briefings have warned about foreign states, including China, Russia, Iran, and India, using pressure, covert influence, and information campaigns to shape Canadian politics and intimidate diaspora communities. State-backed and criminal cyber actors targeting hospitals, pipelines, universities, and small businesses with ransomware and data theft. And a mix of ideologically motivated and religiously motivated violent extremists, inspired by global conflicts, conspiracy theories, or online hate. Rogers is also under pressure at home. Internal surveys have shown low confidence in CSIS management among staff, and the agency has faced criticism over harassment cases and past failures to stop foreign interference. He has already sent blunt internal memos, saying the organization must change culture while still delivering results. Today's public address is therefore doing two things at once. Outwardly, it is meant to tell Canadians in plain language what threats are rising, where the risk is medium or higher, and what CSIS is doing about it. Inwardly, it is a chance for Rogers to show political leaders and the public that CSIS can be more open, more accountable, and still aggressive in defending the country. Expect him to stress partnerships with provinces, with critical infrastructure operators, with communities that are targets of foreign intimidation, and with elections officials as Canada moves toward its next federal vote. The details of the speech will matter. Does he name specific countries and tactics? Does he present new data on plots disrupted? Does he signal any change in the official national terror threat level, which has been kept at medium, despite rising concern about extremism? Whatever the answers, today's briefing is a reminder that Canada's debates about trade, immigration, and foreign policy are not happening in a vacuum. They are watched and sometimes manipulated by outside actors who see opportunity in division. Closing. So, on November 13th, 2025, Canada is juggling three linked challenges: rebuilding a damaged relationship with India without ignoring security concerns, using a new fast-track system to push nation-building projects forward without losing public trust, and explaining to Canadians through the CSIS director how a crowded threat landscape is changing the way the country protects itself. As always, the question for viewers is simple. Do you think today's moves make Canada safer and more prosperous? Or are we taking on new risks in order to move faster in a dangerous world? This has been Equal Ground Headlines. We do not take sides. We explain them.